referee stepped between Bruce Lee and Derek the Bull Maddox. "Take a breath," he warned. Maddox barely heard him. His eyes remained fixed on Bruce. The crowd had changed. Only minutes earlier, they had been laughing at the smaller fighter. Now, nobody was laughing. They had seen something they couldn't explain. Bruce wasn't stronger than Maddox. He wasn't heavier. He wasn't taller. But somehow, every time Maddox attacked, Bruce seemed to know what was coming before it happened. Maddox wiped the sweat from his forehead. Then he looked toward the championship belt. It was still lying in the corner. He pointed at it. "You want that?" Bruce looked at the belt, then back at Maddox. "I didn't come for your belt." Maddox laughed bitterly. "Then what did you come for?" Bruce answered quietly. "You called for someone." Maddox stared at him. Bruce continued, "So I came." The crowd erupted. Maddox clenched his fists. The referee stepped back. The bell rang again. Ding! Maddox exploded forward. This time, there was no hesitation. He attacked with everything he had. A right hand, a left, a body shot, another right. Bruce moved through the storm. He didn't fight against Maddox's power. He redirected it. Every punch passed within inches of his body. But Maddox had changed his strategy. Instead of trying to catch Bruce with one big punch, he began cutting off the ring, step by step. He forced Bruce toward the ropes. Bruce noticed. His eyes moved quickly. Left, right, behind Maddox. The exits were disappearing. Maddox smiled. "You can't run forever." Bruce's expression remained calm. "I'm not running." Maddox charged. Bruce suddenly stepped forward. The audience gasped. Instead of escaping backward, Bruce entered the danger zone. Maddox's punch came down. Bruce moved inside it. His shoulder turned. His hand redirected Maddox's arm. For one brief moment, the enormous fighter lost his balance. Bruce swept his leg. Maddox stumbled, but he didn't fall. He caught himself on one knee. The crowd screamed. Maddox looked up. Bruce was standing several feet away. Maddox slowly rose. His face had become red. "You think this is funny?" "No." "You think I'm slow?" "No." "Then why do you keep making me miss?" Bruce paused. "Because you keep giving me the same opportunity." Maddox's jaw tightened. That answer hurt more than a punch, because it was true. He was repeating himself. And Bruce was learning faster than he could change. Maddox circled. For the first time, he began moving carefully. Bruce followed. Neither man attacked. The arena became almost silent. Thousands of people watched two fighters stare at one another. Then Maddox spoke. "You know what your problem is?" Bruce waited. "You think technique beats strength." Bruce shook his head. "No." Maddox frowned. Bruce said, "I think strength without control becomes a weakness." The crowd reacted. Maddox's face changed. Then he attacked again. This time he didn't throw a punch. He grabbed Bruce. His arms wrapped around him. The crowd roared. Maddox lifted. Bruce's feet left the canvas. For a moment it looked finished. Maddox had finally caught him. The champion grinned. Now what? Bruce was trapped. Maddox tightened his grip. Bruce couldn't overpower him, so he stopped trying. He relaxed. Maddox's smile disappeared. Bruce shifted his weight, then suddenly dropped his center of gravity. Maddox's balance changed. Bruce twisted. The giant fighter stumbled. Bruce slipped free. Maddox crashed into the ropes. The ring shook. The audience erupted. Maddox turned around. Bruce was already there. A rapid strike landed against his chest, then another, then another. Maddox stumbled backward. He grabbed the ropes. His breathing became heavy. Bruce stopped. The referee stepped closer. "Are you all right?" Maddox pushed him away. "I'm fine." He looked at Bruce. But something had changed. He wasn't angry anymore. He was frightened. Not frightened of being hit. Frightened because he was beginning to understand. Bruce wasn't trying to prove he was stronger. Bruce was proving that strength wasn't the only way to win. And Maddox's entire identity was built around strength. His reputation, his belt, his fans, everything. Suddenly, Bruce looked less like an opponent and more like a mirror. A mirror showing Maddox something he had spent years refusing to see. Your turn. What would you do? Imagine you're sitting in that arena. You just watched a man twice Bruce's size get completely outmaneuvered. If you were Maddox, would you A. keep attacking until Bruce goes down, B. stop and admit Bruce has outsmarted you? Write A or B in the comments and tell us where you're watching from. Drop your city and country below. If this story has you hooked, hit like, subscribe, and stay with us, because what happens next will force Maddox to make a decision he never expected to make. Maddox walked toward the center of the ring. He looked at Bruce, then at the crowd, then at the belt. He bent down, picked it up, and held it against his chest. The crowd began cheering. They thought he was going to celebrate. Instead, Maddox stared at the belt. His fingers tightened around it. "You know what this cost me?" Bruce said nothing. "Years." Maddox's voice became quieter. "Broken bones." He looked at the audience. "Blood." Then Bruce. "People who told me I'd never make it." He lifted the belt. "I earned this." Bruce nodded. "I believe you." Maddox looked surprised. "You do?" "Yes." "Then why are you standing there like this belt means nothing?" Bruce looked at the championship. "It means something." Maddox waited. Bruce continued. "But not what you think." The crowd became silent. Bruce pointed toward the belt. "A belt can tell people who won." He looked directly into Maddox's eyes. "It can't tell them who you became." Maddox didn't respond. For several seconds, neither man moved. Then something unexpected happened. Maddox put the belt down, not on the canvas. He placed it carefully on the corner stool. The crowd murmured. The referee looked confused. Maddox turned toward Bruce. "One more." Bruce raised an eyebrow. Maddox shook his head. "No belt." Bruce studied him. "No crowd?" Maddox glanced around. "Let them watch." Bruce nodded. The referee looked nervous. "This is already over." Maddox said, "Not for me." Bruce slowly raised his hands. The crowd erupted. The bell rang. Maddox didn't charge this time. He waited. Bruce waited too. Seconds passed. Then Maddox moved, but there was something different about him. His movements were smaller, more controlled. He wasn't chasing Bruce anymore. He was thinking. Bruce noticed. A tiny smile appeared on his face. "Better." Maddox heard him. "What?" "Now you're fighting." Maddox stepped forward. Bruce attacked. Maddox blocked. The crowd gasped. Bruce attacked again. Maddox moved. For the first time that night, Maddox wasn't reacting late. He was anticipating. Bruce's eyes sharpened. Interesting. Maddox had finally adapted. The next exchange was faster. Bruce struck. Maddox countered. Bruce slipped away. Maddox followed. Bruce changed direction. Maddox stayed with him. The crowd couldn't believe what they were seeing. This was no longer a giant chasing a smaller man. This was two fighters learning from each other in real time. Bruce threw a quick strike. Maddox blocked. Bruce smiled. Maddox smiled back. Then Bruce suddenly changed rhythm. One moment he was slow. The next, crack. A lightning-fast strike landed. Maddox's head snapped back. The audience exploded. Maddox stumbled, but stayed standing. He looked at Bruce. Bruce didn't move. Maddox touched his cheek, then laughed. It was the first genuine laugh of the night. "You're fast," Bruce smiled, "and you're finally listening." Maddox nodded. Then he raised his fists. "Again!" Bruce stepped forward. "Again!" They moved. The fight continued. But now, the crowd wasn't cheering for destruction. They were watching something else. Transformation. Maddox was beginning to understand the lesson Bruce had been trying to teach without ever saying it directly. You don't become stronger by refusing to change. You become stronger when you're willing to admit that you might be wrong. The final exchange came suddenly. Maddox stepped forward. Bruce moved left. Maddox anticipated it. Bruce changed direction. Maddox followed. Bruce stopped. Maddox stopped too. For half a second, both men were completely still. Then Bruce moved. One step, one turn, one perfectly timed movement. Maddox lost his balance. He fell to the canvas. Boom! The arena erupted. The referee rushed forward. Maddox sat on the floor. He looked up at Bruce. Bruce extended his hand. Maddox stared at it, then slowly reached up. Bruce pulled him to his feet. The crowd began cheering, but Maddox wasn't looking at them. He was looking at Bruce. "You could have finished me." Bruce nodded. "Yes." "Why didn't you?" Bruce looked toward the belt. "Because you already learned what you needed to learn." Maddox followed his gaze. The belt sat untouched in the corner, and for the first time, Maddox didn't see it as proof that he was the strongest. He saw it as responsibility. The arena remained loud, but inside the ring, everything felt strangely quiet. Maddox extended his hand. Bruce took it. No cameras, no celebration, no trophy. Just two fighters standing in the middle of a ring. One had learned how to move. The other had learned how to stop fighting his own pride. But the night wasn't over, because someone in the audience had been watching every second, and that person wasn't impressed by Bruce's victory. He was interested in something much bigger. He had seen Bruce move. He had seen Bruce think, and before Bruce could leave the building, a stranger would approach him with an offer that could completely change his future, an offer that would take Bruce far beyond the ring and toward the screen, toward Hollywood, toward the world. But Bruce didn't know any of that yet. All he knew was that a few minutes earlier, a giant man had screamed, "Who wants this?" And now the same man was standing quietly beside the belt. For the first time, he didn't need anyone to answer. The arena was already shaking before Bruce Lee ever stood up. Thousands of people had packed into the old Los Angeles sports hall that night, filling every seat and spilling into the aisles. The air smelled of sweat, leather, and cigarette smoke. Men shouted from the upper balconies while women leaned over the railings, trying to get a better view of the ring. In the center of it all stood a man who looked as if he had been built for one purpose: to destroy whoever stood in front of him. His name was Derek Maddox, but almost nobody called him Derek. They called him the Bull. He was enormous, broad shoulders, thick arms, a heavy chest, a neck that looked carved from stone, and around his waist was a championship belt that glittered beneath the arena lights. Maddox had spent the better part of the evening proving why people were afraid of him. One fighter had lasted less than 2 minutes. Another had been thrown against the ropes so violently that the crowd had gone silent. By the time Maddox returned to the center of the ring, his opponent was already being helped away. Maddox didn't even look at him. He grabbed his championship belt. Then he ripped it from around his waist. Wham! He slammed it onto the canvas. The sound echoed through the arena. Maddox stood over it, breathing heavily. Then he turned toward the crowd. "Who wants this?" The audience exploded. He pointed toward one section. "Anybody." Then another. "Come on!" He spread his arms. "Where are the men?" Nobody moved. Not one fighter. Not one professional athlete. Not one challenger. Maddox smiled. He knew exactly what the silence meant. Fear. He bent down, picked up the belt, and held it above his head. "This belongs to the strongest man in this building." The crowd roared, but somewhere behind them, near the back wall, a quiet man was watching. He wasn't shouting, he wasn't cheering, he wasn't even standing. He simply watched. Bruce Lee. He had been listening to Maddox's challenge for several minutes, and while everyone else was looking at the size of the champion, Bruce was watching something completely different. His feet, his balance, his breathing, the way he shifted his weight before every movement. Bruce's eyes narrowed. He had seen something the crowd hadn't noticed. Maddox was powerful, but power had made him predictable. Bruce leaned back in his chair. Beside him, a friend whispered, "Don't even think about it." Bruce smiled. "I wasn't." His friend looked relieved. Then Bruce stood up. The relief disappeared. For a moment, nobody around them understood what was happening. Bruce stepped into the aisle. People began turning their heads. Someone whispered his name. Another person pointed. Within seconds, a ripple moved through the audience. "Is that Bruce Lee? Bruce Lee? What is he doing?" Bruce continued walking, slowly, calmly. No dramatic entrance, no shouting, no attempt to impress anyone. He simply walked toward the ring. Maddox noticed the movement. His smile disappeared. Bruce stopped at the edge of the ring. Maddox looked down at him. Then he laughed. It wasn't a friendly laugh. It was the kind of laugh designed to make another man feel small. "You're kidding." Bruce said nothing. Maddox looked at the crowd. "This guy?" The audience laughed. Bruce finally looked up. His expression remained calm. Maddox leaned over the ropes. "You sure you're in the right building?" Bruce smiled slightly. "I heard you were looking for someone." The crowd reacted instantly. Maddox straightened. "And you think that's you?" Bruce stepped closer. "I don't know." He paused. "But you keep asking." The arena became strangely quiet. Maddox stared at him. For the first time that night, he wasn't smiling. He climbed down from the center of the ring and walked toward Bruce. The difference in size was almost absurd. Maddox towered over him. "You know what happens when little men try to prove something?" Bruce looked directly into his eyes. "They usually try to prove it." Maddox frowned. Bruce continued. "I don't need to." That sentence changed the atmosphere. The laughter disappeared. The crowd leaned forward. Something was about to happen. Maddox pointed toward the ring. "Get in." Bruce stepped through the ropes. The referee hesitated. He looked at Maddox, then Bruce. "You understand this isn't a demonstration?" Bruce nodded. "I understand." Maddox cracked his neck. Bruce simply raised his hands. There was no dramatic stance, no wasted movement, just stillness. The bell rang. Ding! Maddox attacked immediately. His first punch came like a hammer. Bruce moved, not backward, sideways. The punch cut through empty air. The crowd gasped. Maddox turned. Bruce was already standing several feet away. Maddox smiled. "Lucky." He charged again. This time, Bruce didn't move until the last possible instant. Maddox swung. Bruce slipped underneath. A quick strike touched Maddox's chest. Not hard, just enough. Maddox looked down. The crowd murmured. Bruce stepped back. Maddox stared at him. "You hit me?" Bruce answered quietly. "You left it open." Maddox's face hardened. He charged again, and again. Every time, Bruce disappeared just before contact. The crowd slowly began to understand. This wasn't about strength. It was about timing. Maddox could hit harder. He could probably throw Bruce across the ring, but he couldn't hit what he couldn't catch. And Bruce wasn't trying to overpower him, he was studying him. Every step, every breath, every movement, every mistake. After several exchanges, Maddox began breathing harder. Bruce noticed. He also noticed something else. Maddox always shifted his right foot before throwing his strongest punch. It was barely visible, but Bruce saw it. He waited. Maddox stepped forward. Right foot. Bruce moved. Maddox missed. The crowd erupted. Bruce didn't celebrate. He simply watched. And Maddox finally realized something terrifying. The smaller man wasn't fighting him. He was figuring him out. A question for everyone watching. Before we continue, tell me honestly, if you were standing in that arena, would you have stepped into the ring against Maddox? Would you trust Bruce Lee's speed against a man twice his size? Type yes or no in the comments. And tell me where you're watching from. Are you watching from California, London, New York, India, Pakistan, Uzbekistan, or somewhere completely different? Write your city or country in the comments. And if you enjoy stories like this, hit the like button, subscribe, and stay with us. Because Bruce had just discovered Maddox's weakness, but Maddox was about to discover Bruce's. The next exchange was different. Maddox stopped chasing. He stood in the center of the ring. Bruce waited. The crowd became restless. Maddox wasn't attacking. He was thinking. Then he smiled. "You like running?" Bruce said nothing. Maddox slowly raised his fists. "Let's see how fast you are when there's nowhere to run." Suddenly, Maddox rushed forward, but instead of throwing punches, he drove Bruce backward. 1 step, 2, 3. Bruce's back approached the ropes. Maddox saw it. He smiled. "Got you." He lunged. Bruce moved sideways, but Maddox anticipated it. His arm blocked Bruce's escape. For the first time, Bruce was trapped. The audience exploded. Maddox grabbed Bruce's shoulder. The difference in strength was immediate. Bruce's body was pulled toward him. Maddox lifted. Bruce's feet nearly left the canvas. A roar came from the crowd. Maddox was about to slam him. Bruce twisted. His body turned in mid-motion. 1 foot touched the canvas, then the other. He slipped free. Maddox stumbled forward. Bruce was behind him. The crowd went insane. Maddox spun around. Bruce was already waiting. For a fraction of a second, their eyes met. And Bruce saw it. Anger. Not confidence, not control. Anger. Maddox had lost control. Bruce knew that was dangerous. Because an angry fighter stopped thinking. Maddox charged. Bruce didn't retreat. Instead, he stepped forward. The crowd gasped. 2 bodies moved toward each other. Maddox threw his punch. Bruce turned. The punch missed by inches. Bruce struck. 1, 2, 3 rapid movements. Maddox staggered backward. The arena became deafening. But Bruce stopped. He could have continued. He didn't. Maddox wiped his mouth. His eyes were different now. He wasn't laughing anymore. He looked almost confused. "How?" Bruce lowered his hands. "You're trying to beat me." Maddox stared. Bruce continued. "I'm trying to understand you." That sentence stayed in the air. Maddox suddenly looked at his championship belt lying near the corner, the belt he'd slammed down earlier, the belt he'd told everyone belonged to the strongest man in the building. Now it looked different. Not like a symbol of power, like a question. Maddox turned back toward Bruce. "You think you're better than me?" Bruce shook his head. "No." "Then why aren't you afraid?" Bruce paused. "Because fear doesn't make the decision." Maddox stared at him. The crowd fell silent again, and for the first time that night, the giant fighter didn't know what to do next. Bruce knew the fight was entering its most dangerous moment, because Maddox had one thing left: pride. And pride, Bruce knew, could make a man do something strength never could. It could make him reckless. Maddox lowered his shoulders. His breathing changed. Bruce noticed immediately. The champion was preparing for one final attack. But Bruce didn't know yet that this attack would change everything. Because Maddox wasn't going to try to win anymore. He was going to try to destroy Bruce. And as the referee stepped between them, the audience slowly realized something. The fight had only just begun. The championship belt was still lying in the corner. And before the night was over, someone would have to decide what it was really worth. The arena was still roaring when Bruce Lee stepped away from Derek the Bull Maddox. For several seconds, neither man spoke. The crowd had expected a winner. Instead, they had witnessed something they couldn't quite put into words. Maddox had entered the ring believing strength was everything. He was leaving with a completely different understanding of what strength meant. Bruce walked toward the ropes. He was about to leave when a voice came from behind him. "Mr. Lee." Bruce stopped. He turned. A man in a dark suit was standing near the edge of the ring. He wasn't cheering. He wasn't smiling. He had been watching Bruce from the moment he stood up in the audience. Maddox looked at the man. "You know him?" The stranger shook his head. "Not yet." Bruce stepped down from the ring. The man approached. "My name is Daniel Carter." Bruce studied him. "What do you want?" Carter smiled. "I want to know why you're wasting your talent." Bruce raised an eyebrow. "I don't think I'm wasting anything." Carter glanced toward the ring. "You just stood in front of a man twice your size and made him look like he was fighting the air." Bruce said nothing. Carter continued. "You don't move like the fighters I've seen." Bruce smiled slightly. "Maybe you've been watching the wrong fighters." Carter laughed. "That may be true." He reached into his jacket and pulled out a small business card. Bruce looked at it. Carter was connected to a small television production company. Not a major Hollywood studio, not yet. But they were searching for someone who could bring something different to television. Someone with speed, presence, charisma. Someone who could make an audience stop and watch. Carter looked directly at Bruce. "We're developing a new television project." Bruce handed the card back. "I don't act." Carter smiled. "That's exactly why I came to you." Bruce frowned. Carter continued. "You don't need to act like a fighter." He pointed toward the ring. "You need to show people what fighting actually looks like." Bruce looked back at Maddox. The giant fighter was standing beside his belt. For a moment, their eyes met. Maddox nodded. Bruce nodded back. Then Bruce turned to Carter. "What makes you think people want to see that?" Carter answered immediately. "Because tonight, thousands of people stopped breathing every time you moved." Bruce said nothing. Carter leaned closer. "That isn't normal." Bruce looked down at the business card again. Then he put it into his pocket. "I'll think about it." Carter smiled. "That means yes?" "No." Bruce began walking away. "It means I'll think about it." Carter laughed. "Fair enough." Bruce disappeared through the arena doors. But the story didn't end there, because inside the ring, Maddox was still standing. He looked at his championship belt, then at the empty doorway where Bruce had disappeared. One of his trainers approached. "You okay?" Maddox didn't answer. The trainer picked up the belt. "You won tonight." Maddox shook his head. "No." The trainer looked confused. "No?" Maddox stared toward the exit. "I lost something." "What?" Maddox finally looked at him. "My arrogance." The trainer didn't know what to say. Maddox took the belt, but instead of raising it over his head, he held it quietly against his side. For years, that belt had been proof that nobody could beat him. Tonight, it became something else, a reminder that there would always be someone faster, someone smarter, someone willing to learn, and perhaps most importantly, someone willing to stand up when everyone else stayed seated. Final question for you. Now I want to hear from you. If you had been sitting in that arena when Bruce Lee stood up, would you have believed he could defeat a fighter like Maddox? Yes or no? and tell me where you're watching from. Write your city and country in the comments. If you're watching from the United States, Uzbekistan, India, Pakistan, the United Kingdom, Canada, or anywhere else in the world, let us know. Don't forget to like this story, subscribe, and share it with someone who loves Bruce Lee. Because the most powerful moment of the night wasn't when Bruce knocked Maddox down. It was what happened afterward. Several weeks passed. Bruce returned to his normal routine, training, teaching, studying, practicing. While others focused on how hard they could hit, Bruce focused on something different. How quickly could the body react? How little movement was necessary? How could a person remove everything unnecessary until only the truth remained? The encounter with Maddox stayed in his mind. Not because Bruce had won, but because Maddox had forced him to think differently. Bruce began writing notes, pages and pages, ideas about movement, distance, timing, economy, adaptation. He questioned traditional fighting methods. He challenged old assumptions. And slowly, those ideas began becoming something new, something that would later influence millions. But there was one thing Bruce never forgot from that night: Maddox's belt. Bruce had watched the champion slam it onto the canvas and scream, "Who wants this?" Everyone had thought Maddox was challenging people to take his title. But Bruce eventually realized something deeper. Maddox wasn't really asking who wanted the belt. He was asking, who is strong enough to take what I have? And Bruce's answer had been different. He hadn't tried to take the belt. He had shown Maddox that the belt was never the real measure of strength. Years later, Maddox would tell the story differently. He would say Bruce didn't defeat him. Bruce had simply shown him the difference between being powerful and being in control. And whenever someone asked Maddox who the strongest man he'd ever faced was, he didn't name a champion. He didn't name a heavyweight. He didn't name a fighter with a long list of victories. He simply smiled and said, Bruce Lee. Then they would ask, was he stronger than you? Maddox would shake his head. No. Then how did he beat you? Maddox would pause, then answer, he didn't try to be stronger. Years later, the arena itself changed. New seats, new lights, new fighters, new champions. But stories have a strange way of surviving. Someone always remembers. A spectator remembers what he saw. A trainer remembers what he learned. A fighter remembers the person who changed his understanding of competition. And somewhere in the memories of those who were there that night remained one image. A giant champion standing in the center of a ring, his belt lying on the canvas, thousands of people watching, and a smaller man quietly standing up from the crowd. Bruce Lee. No shouting, no boasting, no promise that he would win. Just one decision: to stand. That was the moment the entire story changed. Because sometimes courage doesn't look like a fist. Sometimes it looks like a man standing when everyone else is sitting. Sometimes strength isn't the ability to overpower someone. Sometimes strength is the ability to remain calm when everyone around you expects you to be afraid. And sometimes the greatest victory isn't taking someone's belt. It's making them understand why they were holding it in the first place. The following morning, Bruce woke before sunrise. The city was still quiet. He stepped outside. The streets were almost empty. He began walking toward his training area. No crowd, no referee, no championship belt, no applause, just another morning. Bruce stopped. He looked at his reflection in a dark window. For a moment, he remembered the arena, Maddox charging, the ropes shaking, the crowd screaming, the belt hitting the canvas. Then Bruce smiled. He knew something the audience didn't. The fight with Maddox had never really been about Maddox. It had been about a question. What happens when someone refuses to fight the way everyone expects? Bruce had answered that question with movement, with discipline, with patience, and with courage. He continued walking, step by step, toward a future nobody could yet see. Hollywood was waiting. Television was waiting. Millions of people around the world would eventually know his name. But on that morning, Bruce was simply a young martial artist walking down an empty street. And perhaps that was the most important lesson of all. The world would later remember Bruce Lee as a legend. But legends are not created in the moment everyone starts cheering. They are created in the quiet moments when nobody is watching, when nobody is certain, when nobody knows what will happen next, and when one person decides to stand anyway. That night, Derek the Bull, Maddox had slammed his belt onto the canvas and screamed, "Who wants this?" Bruce Lee had stood up. He didn't take the belt. He didn't need to. Because by the end of the night, everyone in that arena understood something they hadn't understood when the fight began. The strongest person in the room isn't always the one who can hit the hardest. Sometimes, it's the one who knows exactly when not to hit. And that lesson would follow Bruce Lee far beyond that arena, far beyond the ring, far beyond Hollywood, until his name became something that the world could never forget. Bruce Lee, the man who stood up.